welcome to live stream number 132. My name is Lars Christensen, and today, man, I think we have a good live stream topic for you here. We're going to talk about sculpt to solid. We're going to talk about some more complex type of shapes, and I'm doing this because I don't think it has to be so complex. At least that's my attempt today to explain this in the best terms as I possibly can. Thank you so much for taking the time to join these live streams, even if you're watching the recording. Absolutely appreciate it. I can see we got Isaac here. Love it. Thank you so much. I have been a little bit away, so it's good to be back on the normal schedule, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're back on it, so we should just see some live streams coming up here. My email address is down in the description area, lars.christensen@autodesk.com. Any future topics you would like to see, send it my way. I would love to try to incorporate more of those that I've done in the past. So, today we're going to talk about how to model up a watch lug and bezel. I'm saying that while I'm looking because I didn't know that I had to look it up. Nice model, right? So what we're going to model up today is kind of like, this is called the bezel, I guess the one with the numbers. And then the lug is kind of like the body of a watch. Now, I am not going to do this into the details that many people would like to see in this live stream, because we're going to try to keep it between 15 to 30 minutes. And this is actually, I'm scratching my own itch here a little bit. This is for a upcoming Make Anything project that I'm going to be doing on the Stepcraft wood router. But many times when you're talking about some products like this, like consumer products, we're talking about complex shapes. We're talking about surfaces and T-splines. And if you're fairly new to Fusion, if this is like, if you just started like recently, I don't want you to be overwhelmed about this. I want you to just lean back and just watch and kind of like add it to your tool belt as something that you might gotta dabble into at one point. So let me get into this. So we're gonna use this image here as a reference to kind of like draw it up. Now I also did bring in the side view of this one, and this is gonna be, I'm not gonna make this into detail here. But what I'm looking specifically is this curved area right here that I'm looking to do, and I also want to do some curved up here on the bezel itself. And this is where T-splines up here becomes interesting, and I want to show you a couple of tips around this that hopefully make sense. So let's start modeling up here. Now we are in the modeling workspace. We're gonna also get into the patch workspace, and then inside the T-spline environment. Like I said before, if you're fairly new, don't think that this is top over the wall advanced stuff. It's just a couple of more tools to your toolbox. I'm gonna bring that image in, and I'm gonna do it in the model environment because that's where I normally do that anyways. So I'm gonna click up here to insert canvas. I'm gonna just select the top view. I'm gonna click select image, and then I'm just gonna bring in that top view you just saw before, that image. Now I'm gonna go to the top view so I can kind of like look at it, and I'm going to like rotate it around a little bit because I want to see it like this, not for any other reason. Inside of this dialog, canvas dialog, be aware of, I normally like to go halfway transparent, so 50%. That's kind of like my preference. And then I'm going to hit OK to this right now. Now, if you've seen this before, then this is nothing new to you. But if you're fairly new, some of these tools might be helpful to know about. So we now have a canvas folder because that's where this image of this nice Rolex is at. But right now I just brought it in as an image. So what I'm going to do is I am going to right click on that view up here in the tree and say calibrate. And when I do that, I get like a little crosshair for my cursor right here. And I'm going to make a dimension that this image now will be scaled up to. So you see here's like 14 millimeters. Normal, nice big Rolex is probably close to, I don't know, 40 millimeters maybe. And when I do that, you can see that it kind of like blows the image up, kind of like it made it bigger. So right click on the canvas and calibrate will make it bigger. Now another thing I'm going to do, just I think is best practice, is I'm going to turn my origin on, the light bulb over here. And my origin is actually over here. So I'm going to right click on the canvas and say edit canvas again. And I'm going to move the canvas over to the center of the origin where the dial is. Now we're going to talk about these handles here in a little bit. You're going to get a little bit more familiar with these. So I'm just going to grab this rectangle here. Will kind of like let me move the image around. So that's kind of like the square, I guess it is. So I'm just going to place it close to, that's pretty close to the center there, and hit OK. So I just resized this canvas. I blew it up, and now we have the right location for it. Okay, so now I'm going to start sketching out kind of like what I want from this. And again, this is going to be, probably a lot of questions afterwards, but I'm okay with that. You can email me, lars.christensen@autodesk.com. I'm going to select the line tool, and I'm just going to place a couple of lines. I'm going to make a sketch from the top here. I'm going to create a line out to about where I want the lug or the bezel to end in one side. Oops. I was going to say hit the green check mark, but then I ended up creating a line. Hit the D on my keyboard. And I'm going to do another line vertically up too, just to kind of like bringing this one up into a quadrant, because we're going to take advantage of symmetry in this one here. Like when you're looking at something like this, if you can chop it down to a smaller section, it makes it a little bit easier. Now we're going to get into, now we're going to kind of like create the outside shape. Right now we kind of like have a line here and a line here. And we're going to use the spline tool for this. Now again, some of you guys are very familiar with these tools. But I think if you are familiar with all this, I think you're going to see something pretty cool I'm going to do this. So even if you are advanced. Now, spline tool. Sitting right up and, right underneath my drop down here, spline tool. Right there. I've seen many people make the mistake that when they use the spline tool, they click on a point. So we're going to start right here. And then they try to make like a bunch of points. Like this. Trying to follow kind of like the contour of what we want to do. This is not the really great way to do this. Let me do a Control Z to undo this. Instead, put the spline point where there's kind of like a break in the model. So right here where the bezel meets the lug, right here where the kind of like this corner intersection right here, there's a corner intersection right there. I'm going to move down, do one right there, and then I'm going to close it off by hitting the other point we had created over there, hit the green check mark. Now this spline right now is not very attractive, but we're going to work on it. Now see, my spline tool is still active, so I'm just going to escape to get out of it. Now I have my white cursor. One of the things I like to do when it comes to the spline tool is I actually like to use these sketch relations over here to kind of like nail things down. So if I click on this point right here, you will see I get a spline handle for that point. I can move the spline kind of like around on. What I like to do is create some relationships with some of those spline points. So this one here, for example, I'm going to make that one vertical. So by selecting on that spline right here, I'm going to make it vertical. So now that is vertical. When I'm looking, if I go to the other end of this spectrum, I go over and click on this point up here. This one here, I actually think I'm probably going to make that one horizontal instead. So select that one, click the horizontal relationship. It just makes it a little bit easier to kind of like adjust these. And then you can start moving these different spline points to kind of like make the shape you want. So if I select up here, you can try to kind of like drag it in. I'm actually kind of happy with this shape here. But as you will see when you start working with these spline points, is that you kind of like are affecting a lot of different things. So now I got a little lump up here. Start dragging this one down, should take care of that. But then you got to watch out behind the spline. So these handles, get yourself a little bit of practice with them, okay? That's what I should tell you about those. Try to get some practice in with them. That will definitely make your life easier when it comes to kind of like learning how to control them in here. Now, I think I'm okay with this. It's getting there. Make this one more sharp. That looks good. You know what? Maybe I'll make this one horizontal too. So this is more experience than anything when it comes to these spline points. So if you are brand new, I would definitely recommend that you just you get familiar with them, you play around with them, and they will give you kind of like a chance to make them pretty good. I don't like how sharp that thing is. Maybe if you get a relationship you don't like, you can click on the relationship, hit delete, and then you can actually delete it again. So now I can actually go back into this spline point right here, and I can kind of like, maybe I didn't want it to be horizontal, I want more of a radius on it. So this is how you kind of play with this, and I'm gonna say this is pretty good. Now, from when I'm doing my make anything, I'm probably gonna come back in and maybe polish it up a little bit, but see, you get the gist of it, kind of like following around this rectangle right here. Now, some people are asking me about fully defining splines, and you absolutely can fully define them. You can start placing dimensions on each of these points and each of the length of these handles, and that's fine. But for something like this, I will just right-click on the spline and select Fix, and that will lock it down so it is it's fully defined. So we kind of like created this shape here. Now let me just hide the canvas for a second, the watch. So now you can kind of see what we have here. And we are in the model environment. So if at this point you could go in and just start extruding, right? We could select this and we could start extruding this out in some kind of a thickness. And we now have a quarter of that. If you're fairly new, just so you kind of like get an idea, we're going to do this in a second. We could mirror, and I would select bodies, this body over this face, right? And then if we right-click, repeat mirror, select these two bodies, we could mirror them over this face. And, you know, you can kind of see that starts looking a little bit like, I guess it's called a lug on a watch. So we kind of like now have that shape created of that somewhat Rolex. So I hope that this is somewhat useful. Now I don't want a solid for this yet, so I'm just going to delete them down here in the timeline. So we get back here, I'll show you my sketch is still in the spline. Now the thing that gets this into the sculpting environment, we're going to come back to this spline in a second, is the curvature that I kind of showed on the other image here, this curvature right here. And that's where I would use the sculpting environment. Now, so we have the spline, this is all cool. Now let's go into the sculpting environment. I'm in the model in space. I'm gonna click Sculpt or Create Form, and it gives me a notification that we're getting into the sculpt environment. I'm just going to say okay to that. And you will see that our menu have changed a little bit, but some of the tools are still the same. So I can create an offset plane. So I'm going to create an offset plane. I'm going to make it, I don't know how thick we're going to make this one. 6 inches out. So now I have a plane 6 inches up. And one of the things that I like to do is think of sculpting almost like working with a blanket. Instead of just not so it gets too complicated. So what I'm going to do is, if we go over to the Create box, you can create a plane. I'm going to select Plane. I'm going to select that face that I want to sketch on, right? Go up to the top here. That face here, and then I can sketch. You see that it kind of like you have center or 2-point. I'm going to select a 2-point rectangle. I'm going to make it bigger, make the blanket bigger than our watch itself. So just left click, and now you will see we get a blanket up here. And you can choose, when I hit OK to this, you will see that this is right now have like 4 squares on it. That's in the dialog box. You can add that. But one of the tricks, if you're fairly new to sculpting, one of the tricks you need to know is that you can go into modify and you can insert edges. And insert edges just means inserting more lines. So if I click insert edge and I select this edge, you'll see I get a green line here, and I can even select this edge. And now I can put in a distance, for example, but if I just hit OK here, now I just created more squares. So you can always go in under the insert edge and insert more edges in here. Now what this means is, what these faces means is how we're going to control how this blanket folds, how flexible it is. So the way we work mostly inside of the Sculpt environment is by right-clicking and say Edit Form, and then you can select an entity and you can manipulate it. So if I select this corner right here, you will see we get that triad I talked about before. And I've selected a corner. If I grab this arrow right here, look what I'm going to do. I'm literally just pulling that blanket down. Now, it keeps a constant curvature to everything. And the more of these segments we have in here, the less we're kind of manipulating that. Let me just do a Control Z to go back. Let me try, instead of selecting this corner, selecting this corner and do the same thing. See how the blanket now is pulling all the way over here to the center of it versus it's kind of controlled of just these 2 blankets. This one is still straight. So that's how Sculpt environment works, in the manner we can just grab a corner, an edge, or a face, and we can drag it. So let me select, instead of a corner, let me select this face right here and drag that down. Now I'm kind of like pulling that whole face. And you can see how we kind of like get a curvature up there. Now if I undo that and select, hold down Control, and also select this face, so I'm multi-selected both edges, now I'm pulling the whole face down like that. So I'm trying to show you here that this is how we mostly manipulate with this environment. So to kind of create that curvature that I want on this watch, I am going to select this corner and just drag the arrow down, and then look at my model and be like, all right, that might be pretty good, but you know what? What happens if I select this corner? Oh, now I get a lot more curvature, right? So now you can kind of like start controlling what you want on this blanket, to kind of creating that whatever I think should be kind of like a good fit for this. And remember that that I can completely come back and modify this. I could also select, if I really liked how these 2 points are moving together right now, I could select those together and I get a little bit more feather to them. So this is kind of like how we manipulate this. So you can select points, as you can see here. You can select edges like you just saw before. We can also select the whole face and move that down too if we want to. So I hope that this kind of like helps you see how we can move this. Now, looking at this right now, I have all the bends over here, and I probably want them over in this area. Of course, at any point I can just window select the whole thing. Now everything is selected, and now I can just move that over kind of like on the arrow. So just be aware of that you have some you have some flexibility when it comes to this here. Now I'm going to come back to this sculpting in just a second. Now, so what we have now in this is we have this blanket created, and to get out of this space, I'm going to hit finish form up here, and now you will see I'm back in the modeling environment. So what have we done so far? A lot of talking. Sorry about that. We created a spline, right? That is like the Bezel, and we just created this blanket that has a really nice continuously curvature on it. Now, again, inside of Fusion, there's a lot of different tools, but when you come to complex shape, if you're fairly new to Fusion or to 3D modeling, it really helped me. So I guess for me, it really helped thinking about it as blankets and not as complex solid models. So now where I've created this patch up here, this blanket, the patch environment in here is really surface models, is really also blankets. So if I go into the patch environment and I extrude our spline up, and I'm just going to go past kind of our blanket right here, that also is a blanket and no thickness. It's like playing with a blanket we have kind of created here right now. Now, so what we really have is we don't have any solid models. This is all kind of like blankets overcutting each other. But if we go back into the model environment, because this is where we mostly want to end up anyways, right? There's a tool in here that is almost sexy. It's called Boundary Fill. Now, what Boundary Fill does is it will try to create a solid. Now, if I select Boundary Fill, it says it's looking for the tools in here. So I'm going to select our first blanket. I'm going to select our second blanket. Then somebody is saying, well, you right now have a hole in the bottom of this model. We only have the first T-spline creates the top, not the bottom. But you can actually select a plane, and we have that bottom plane. And when I select that, then you will see things turns green, and I get a little checkbox in here. So if I click over here and select checkbox and hit OK, now I actually just got a body. Let me turn the two blankets off we created. Now I actually have a solid body resembling kind of like my log on this part here. Okay. Now at any point we can, so that's pretty cool with this boundary fill. If this was too much, rewatch it again. You can always speed it up on YouTube if I talk too much. Now again, at any point we can go back in here and we can right click and we can add it, and we can be back in that sculpt environment. So if I maybe thought that, you know what, I'm going to right click and hit edit form, that this area here should really be up a little bit higher, maybe actually I select, instead of the point, maybe I select these two edges. I can pull that up and kind of like work with that in here and kind of like get a different type of thing in here. So you can create different points, different ways that you want kind of like curvature to work. And then when I hit finish form, it's going to go right back to that area again. So with this, I'm actually going to go back to where I did before, right in the beginning. I have one body, that's a half. So I'm going to go back in and create a mirror. And if I select bodies, I can mirror this one over this edge. Hit OK. I can right click, repeat mirror, select these two bodies, and over mirror plane. And now we got this. And that's pretty close to somewhat what I want. Now you will see that I get now 4 bodies I want it to be one body. So don't forget about, there's a combine tool in here, and we can actually select all 4 pieces, and you will see the 4 bodies now becomes one body over here. And don't worry about these up here. They were just tools to get to this point. Now, so I got some nice curvature on these areas here, but I also noticed that the whole thing is now a little wobbly from that blanket. So what you could do is I can create another offset plane and select this plane here, and maybe just go up 5.5 maybe. Remember, we made the whole thing 6, and then now I could do something like split body. Select our first body, select that plane I just made right there, and that will let me kind of cut this in here. That actually shows me, I don't think I like this too much, actually. Let me hide this. That doesn't give me much curvature in here, does it? Of what I was looking for. Click edit, go back into the sculpting environment, hit edit form, and I'm not gonna take maybe these 3 points here. See if I can pull that down a little bit more. Oh yeah, see, now I got what I wanted there. So don't forget that you can always go back and modify this. This body number 11, kind of like the top, it's almost like you're cutting off a piece of cake. If I don't want that, I can turn my right click on, and I can click remove. Don't hit delete. That will try to heal it. Remove. That will become a timeline down here. And now I got a flat face. So I hope this kind of like shows you, and I maybe want to play a little bit more with this for my project, but I hope that this kind of makes sense. Now let's finish up the bezel here on top of this watch, because now, of course, I'm almost on a half an hour. I'm going to use Sculpt for that too. I wanted to show you something neat about that. And that is, if I go back into the Sculpt environment, don't forget that you have the same tools in here that you are used to. So I can go ahead and create a sketch right on top of this face, hit C for circle, and now I can sketch out a circle here. I'm just going to make it all the way out to the center here. And in here, we used plane before, like a blanket. You can also extrude right up using that edge. And I can extrude up this little wall here. Ooh, I'm going to show you another trick. Right now, it skips to 1 millimeter. And that can be a little annoying. If you go down here, turn off increment move down on the grid setting. Now you are not controlled that it snaps in. Now it's a little bit more loose. Now, so you see how the bezel starts to take shape here? I kind of like have a drum coming up here. Now, I want to show you another trick. If you're on a Mac, it's the Option key. If you're on a PC, it's Alt. Find that one on your keyboard. If you hold down Alt, and drag on the arrow again, then, oh, I just got to extrude it out first. Extrude it out. Right-click, hit Edit. Select. Now, here's the thing. If I click once on this edge, it will only select that edge. See how that only lifting up that edge? Control-C to undo. But if you instead double-click on that edge, it selects the whole perimeter. Double-click selects the whole perimeter. Okay. Now, here's my second trick. Right now, if I'm moving it up, you will see that I'm just getting continually pulling up on the extrude. If I hold down the Alt key, hold down Alt, and I drag again, a whole new section gets created. You can see we get a whole new section. So now I can continually working with this. Now, I'm asking you to if this is new to you, go in here and play around with it and don't get too frustrated in the beginning. But you just got to get used to some of the small tools. Now in here, we've been pulling in these handles. Right here on the edges, or we read the rectangle will kind of like, we did that in the beginning with the image. The other ones in here will actually scale it. So if I hold down here, look at what happens. I'm actually scaling inwards on that segment we just created. See how it got it? I scaled it inwards. I'm going to do it again. I still have that edge selected. So if I hold down Alt and drag the arrow up again, I get a new segment that's going to go straight up. It's a little tall. I'm going to make it a little smaller. And then if I go in here and I select this area in here, I can scale it again inwards. Okay? So I know this is for some of you guys is brand new information and maybe a little bit like, woo. Alt key or Option on a Mac and drag up and you create a whole new section. This is a quick way to kind of like add to this segment here. Now I'm going to do one more segment. Let's just select this segment here and drag it down. You can see how it kind of like start dragging it down like this, right? It's very it's like playing with Play-Doh. So I'm just going to drag it down to a certain distance. Now, one of the problems I've had inside of Sculpt environment have always been trying to figure out like accuracy when I was in here and kind of like pulling things up. Let me hit OK to this edit. I want to show you another tool. And that is one in here on the modify called Flatten. So what Flatten will let me do is I can select all the vertices. I'm holding down Control and I'm selecting all the vertices on this point down here. And then I can select Flatten to a plane. I'm just going to select that plane we had before. And now I know that was the plane we sketched on before, right? So now I know that they are the same height. I'm going to hit OK to this, and there is my bezel. Now it's still right now just a blanket that we have kind of like wrapped around here. So we can go in and use the same thing we did before. We can go in and say Finish Form to get out of it. And then we can go in and use the boundary fill, select that blanket, select that plane, and when we do that, it turns green, showing us that we are closing it up. We can select that area there, and then that becomes a solid. So now we have, turn that blanket off. Now we kind of like have the top bezel there and the bottom, and then you could, in my case here, for what I need to do, I will actually combine them. Now I gotta go in and tweak this model more afterwards. But now we have the curved shape on here. We have the curved bezel up there. And we are back in the model environment where you normally are working. So open a sketch right here on this top face. C for circle. Draw a circle out here. Probably dimension it, right? Fully define your stuff. Q for press pull. This is a solid that you can cut in and do all the things that you normally would in a normal solid. So a little bit of a different way to kind of like work with something like this. And like I said, you know, if I wanted to, you know, if we had another, or we have, but if I decided that we were going to spend another 2 hours on this, we could definitely get this a lot closer. But I think that this gives you a good way to kind of get close to the shape of something like this. Now, like I said, I'm going to use this project for a Autodesk Make Anything. So I'm going to have to go in and modify it a little bit, make some tweaks to it, make it maybe a little bit more rounder up here, get the cutouts in the bezel up on top. But I hope that this gives you a good foundation how you could start doing this, combining the T-splines with the surfaces, with the boundary fill, and kind of like get some shapes out there that might be a little different than our standard you know, just push pull. It's good to be back, man. It's Monday. Absolutely love it. Really appreciate all you guys taking the time for joining these live streams. 85 people in here. Absolutely awesome. I hope this was useful. You let me know. Thumbs up if this is good. Thumbs down if you don't like it. Let me know. Your feedback means the world to me. Don't forget my email address down in the description area. lars.christensen@autodesk.com for any future topics. That's one of the things I really would like to try to do more of whatever you guys want, so I can address that. Cool, man. Tomorrow, same time, we're going to talk about the Fusion roadmap. That came out while I was gone. We definitely got to dig into that and talk about some things coming. Wednesday, we're going to talk about how to model up an exhaust manifold. Woo. That's another request from one of you guys. Thursday, some sheet metal. That's something I've got a request for. And Friday, cam and probing, another request. Just trying to add a little bit more value to your use of Fusion 360. Really appreciate it, guys. I'm going to do what I normally do. I'm going to end the broadcast. So if you're watching the recording, thank you so much for taking the time. And if you're in the live stream, I'll come in and say hi. So take care, folks.